Welcome to Night Shadows. I'm Stewart Best, where the paranormal is normal, where that which you thought you knew, you didn't, and where the future can be known if you know exactly where to look.
Well, good evening, everyone, and thanks for tuning in and listening. We have a very special show tonight. We have scientist Stan Deyo with us. We have Larry Taylor with us, and Stan has done remarkable research on not only the history of Genesis and where things are, but we're going to get into some of that tonight. Welcome to the show, Stan.
Good to be here, Stewart. Larry, hello this evening.
Yeah,
hello,
Larry,
Stan.
how you doing?
I'm doing fine. Just waiting on Mr. Deyo to release some information.
Yeah, this sounds, that must have been an exciting trip. Can you elaborate extensively on what brought you there and all of that? We have a lot of new listeners all the time, so maybe bring everybody up to speed. Stan, as you know, is a scientist, or if you didn't know, he's a scientist, done a lot of excellent research on many different topics, anti-gravity, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, Stan, jump in and tell us about this amazing trip.
Look, back in 2014, I was asked to do presented a lecture at the Colorado Springs Prophecy Conference there. And the subject I chose was the Garden of Eden, the discovery of it, because earlier that year, I had actually finished 30 years of research trying to find the Garden of Eden. New data came in from Google Earth and from the Scripps Institute over in California, which allowed me to do that. So, okay, that was 2014, made videos of it and DVDs and shared it with a number of people, a few thousand people. The networks, nobody was interested. No newspapers were interested. Not a single media outlet was interested in the fact that I'd proven that this was the Garden of Eden. Well, okay, I let it just kind of die a natural death. I figured nobody was interested. And then a listener from one of the radio shows I do with the Hagmans contacted me late last year. You still there? Okay, yep. Sorry. Contacted me late last year, Jared, and he started talking to me about let's make a line of jewelry using stones from Tanzania where the Garden of Eden is. And he says, let's collaborate. And I said, okay, fine. You do the work, and I'll be the front man. So we started negotiating, and over the last 6 months, he's been saying, you've got to go over to Tanzania, to the Garden of Eden. You got to go over there and film yourself there. And I said, no, that's too long a trip. I don't want to do it. So this kept going back and forth, until about February this year. He says, all right, now I've checked. He says, we can get half price off if we go between May 1st and May 31st this year. So we got to go. I said, no. He said, I'll pay. I said, okay. You're paying, I'm going. And we actually split a lot of the cost. But anyway, he finally convinced me that we need to go down there. And we got some new high-resolution cameras from Sony, and we had Samsung phones and various things like that to take documentation, stills and movies of what we went to see. Mm-hmm. Now, there was one thing in all the research I did that I couldn't get any information on the Internet. It was just Google Earth had a picture of it from a satellite that was old. And it was a little area, maybe 20 acres or so, up on the top of the Ngoro Plateau in Tanzania. Now, the Ngoro crater I'd already discussed was the Garden of Eden, where 25,000 to 30,000 animals still live, big animals. And but there was something I noticed up on the top where the water should have come from, up on the plateau. I couldn't find a name for it to start with. Nobody had a name for this wet area. But I knew it had to have springs in it that had bubbled up in huge amounts before to create the four rivers of Eden that I talked about in the Bible. Well, I took the Google Earth thing and I had a peek at it. And actually, if you're near a computer, if you go to standeyo.com, to my website, and scroll down to where it has a picture of a microphone, it says Show Images. And if you click on that Show Images page, and then on the Hagman show, you'll see a whole bunch of pictures. Are you there yet?
Yep, Hagman. Show, you said?
Yeah, and then it should come up and say show images 5 June, right?
Yes, got it.
Okay, we'll scroll down to images 68 and 69. Now, I knew I had to find, if we're going to go over there, I was going to have to find the low spot where the water came up, from the deepest part of that marshy area, and we're talking thousands of years ago. So I started just plotting, by altitude, putting a dot here and a dot there where it was like 9,630 feet, 9,631 feet. And if you look at image 69, if we can get it to come up, there it's gone to sleep. Anyway, the first thing I found was that there was a low spot. Oh, actually, that's a movie. You want to go to image 68. Go to image 68. Okay. You'll see in the middle of image 68 a little tiny yellow square right down there in the middle of that wet area that you can see in image 69. Now, that area inside there is all 9,630 feet high, and it forms a perfect square. And I thought, well, gee, that's odd, duh. And then I said, well, let's go out 9,631 feet. And then I made another contour and another and another. And you can see that there was something there that kind of slid, down into a square hole. And I thought, what is this? We'll have to find out. So anyway, my partners and I got on a few jets and flew over to Tanzania in the middle of May and spent a couple of weeks there, traveling and there as well. And we had to get permission from the conservancy that handles all that. It's part of UNESCO, and it's controlled by the Nguru Conservancy Group. And you have to have permission to get up into those areas there and go on foot. And so we met with the deputy director, because the director was down in Dar es Salaam at a government meeting. And the deputy director was very kind, Paolo, and it was his name, Paolo. And he assigned 2 armed guard rangers to accompany us up into the wilderness there. And so we put that as high priority. We wanted to go there first because this was absolute proof. I had to find water and evidence of water in large amounts over the ages there. So I showed them this, and they said, gee, we've never seen that. Nobody's ever done a contour map of it. I wonder what made that. And I said, well, it could either be, Maasai people up there in the area using it for a water trough or something. It's perfect square, though, as you can see. Or maybe the Germans in World War II did something up there when they were in Tanzania. So it was a mystery, and everyone was very excited about it. We still are, in fact. But they said, okay, here are your rangers, and, good luck. You can go there, and our rangers can take you anywhere else in the Nguru Conservancy you want, and we'll let you into areas that are restricted, but you can film it for people that are going to watch your videos and things, but just tell them that certain areas they can't go to without our permission and armed guards. And the guards aren't against terrorists or anything like that. They're just against wild animals that might kind of see you as lunch or dinner, So, so that's that series of contour lines. And the red lines in that drawing there are the path, the 3.7 mile path that we had to take on foot up through the highlands there at around 9,600 to 10,000 feet. And I got to tell you, for an old guy like me, going up at that altitude, even though I'd done treadmill and kind of tried to get in shape, I wasn't in shape for that. It was tough. Especially well, there was about a 370-foot drop, down a slope down to get to that from the 10,000-foot ridge. And and the ground we had to walk over, the path had been so many times run by cattle and by donkeys and stuff that there were grooves in the ground about 8 inches wide and about 8 to 9 inches deep. And then grass on the intervening between that and kind of covering over the ruts. So you'd step in where you thought was solid ground, kabang! Oh, wow, that was a hole. And so it made it tough on all of us. But anyway, we did get there. And if you're on that show images page still, if you go up to image 83 and 84, you'll see what our cameraman and our rangers, and that's what we all saw together. That series of water holes there is part of a bunch of fountains, or springs that came up from the very depths of that mountain, and that's what flowed out over the ridges there to make the waters of Eden. Well, we were tickled to death to see all that water there. And then out of the blue, this Maasai woman in a red robe came, strolling up the ruts. And she says, hi, how are you? And let me show you how to walk down these ruts so you don't break your ankles and things. So fine. And she said that in Ma'a, which is a Maasai language. And one of our guides did Swahili and Ma'a, so he translated for us. So we asked her, what do you call this place? What's the name of it? She says, Kumnana. I said, okay, what's Kumnana mean? So then this big conversation transpired between our rangers and her, back and forth. And the best translation they could get is a question mark. The name of this area is called Kumnana, which means like earrings, the earring, like that that you'd wear in your ear. And for the Maasai women, of course, they have these very nice jeweled and silver type earrings, and that's kind of a status symbol, and it's a precious thing. So we assume that the reason they call this, the question mark of Kumnana, is this a treasure, was because of the water, which, they all use. And she told us that during the drier seasons that this water dries up a bit, and over on the left side you can see in that picture where it's kind of rough and pointy there and little dark shapes around the edge of the water. That's where that square was that we were looking at, and they had dug out a square. I still don't know why they made it square, but they dug out a square, and the water came up into there, and then they scooped out back to the right a ramp for the animals to go down and drink and then walk back out, which makes sense. But anyway, that's Kumnana. And once we found that, of course, our guides, everybody else, they were all just excited, had their own, iPhones taking pictures of us discovering it, whatever. And Jared and Christina, who were my partners in this, they wanted to be baptized there, so I baptized them in the waters of Eden right there at 9,630 feet. It was amazing. Wow. We've got so much film stuff, it's going to take me months to get it all together, but it was a marvelous moment because even the park authority didn't know what this place was called, and the story behind it. And so they're taking pictures, and one of the rangers said, "We're going to call this Deyo Crater." I said, "Yeah, good luck on that." But anyway, it is just a marvelous feeling to stand there in the quiet of the day with the clouds drifting over and down and through. I mean, you're so high that the clouds kind of settle on the ground, then blow away, and we just kind of were standing there in the quiet listening, and occasionally toward the evening, as we stayed there for a few hours, toward the evening you hear ta-tong, ta-tong, and these sounds like very subtle cowbells for the Maasai herdsmen, were taking their cattle back up to home that night. From there, they don't stay there overnight. And it was a magical moment. We all just were astounded at it. I mean, it's life-changing, that alone. But that was the last proof I needed for the clues to where the Garden of Eden was and is today. It's a real place. You can walk on it. You can put your hand in the waters of Eden right there. So that was, once we found that, then the next trip was to go down to the south of the Ngoro Plateau where the waters from here flowed. About maybe 30 miles south of there. So we went back to our lodge there at the Sopa Lodge on the rim of the crater and rested up for a night and geared up for a trip down into what is the Garden of Eden. And that is a whole interesting thing. I mean, that's just, wow. It's life-changing.
Wow.
Let me just see here. I'll just tell you a few things and show you pictures. We have film footage that we took. If you look at number 72, slide 72, that's a single slide out of our high-res video that we took. And that is the red dirt road, man-made from the red earth. It's a red dirt road leading through the acacia trees down into the Garden of Eden. It's the road is lined with these acacias that bend over the top of the road, so you go in a canopy of acacia over the top of you as you drive down into the crater, which you can see in the video once we get that ready for you to look at. So we went down, and as we started going down into the garden, let's see, let's look at slide, those aren't there, okay. Look at slide 75, Springtime in the Garden with the African daisies. these things are peculiar to Madagascar and to Africa. They're a lot like our little yellow flowers you have in the garden to keep the bugs away. I forget what you call those. But anyway, if you look across the valley floor inside the crater, this is what we're seeing here. If you click your mouse on that little brown dot up there, you see it's an elephant out in the middle of all these daisies. You see him?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, the wall you see behind you is about 1,600 to 2,000 feet tall, up from the ground. That's the rim of the crater that keeps all these animals there happily protected in this environment. Now, we started seeing fields and fields of this. We came just at the beginning or midpoint of spring, where animals were, procreating and where the flowers are blooming and that kind of stuff. And yellow is the predominant flower there, but there are purples, lavender type flowers as well. When we started driving down and seeing these things, these flowers, on our left and on our right, there were two major rivers that feed, from the waters up at the top of that I just showed you at Konana. These two rivers come down, and they are filled. Each river is filled with a line of trees from the rim down into the floor of the crater. And you know what kind of trees they are? Fig trees.
Wow, really?
Absolutely. We just, when the guy told us that, I said, what is that? He said, that's a fig tree. And that's fig trees, plural, right? We nearly fell out of the Jeep, let me tell you. That was incredible. We were just astounded. And so I've said it before on the show that, I thought that there's a little round disc tabletop hill there inside the crater floor called Ingatati Hill. And that's in image 76. And if you look at that, you can see that it's kind of what might have been the actual top of this volcano before it collapsed, but it's a almost perfect circle. And it has two high points on it, one that we're looking at in this picture close to us, and another one that's in the next slide, over in slide 74. And you see this little light green mound. Well, that's the far side where I think one of the trees of either knowledge or life was planted, because there are only two high spots there. And so we looked at that and we said, well, what are those trees there around the rim that you see there in the first slide in 76? Oh, those are fig trees too up on Ingatati Hill. So if you were Eve and Adam and you realized you'd just eaten the forbidden fruit, where would you get fig leaves? Well, just reach out and grab them.
That's right.
And,
wow. Fig leaves,
yeah, and so we were, as I said, we had the armed guards with us there so we could get to places most people can't. And we're up on the top, and we noticed over on the other side of the hill here, from this shot on Ingatati Hill, there was fencing wire enclosing a certain area there on the other side of the hill, close to where that other tree would have been planted. And we said to him, why is that fenced in? He says, oh, that's part of a research project we're doing here on Ingatati Hill and elsewhere here in the crater floor. Grass on this hill just, grows miraculously. We're trying to figure out how it's so healthy and what makes it grow so well here. And I'm thinking, well, that's the hand of God touching the soil there. But anyway, catch up, guys. And so, I know that certain types of volcanic ash and lava flows, when they deteriorate, make beautiful soil for growing plants and, of course, feeding your sheep and making the sheep and you healthy as well. So it's interesting that they are doing this study after thousands of years and finding out, gosh, the dirt from here is miraculous. All right, so that's Ingatati Hill. And from there, up on the top of that hill, we could look out. If you look at slide 78, you will see we're standing above that line of fig trees that you saw in slide 76. We're looking out over onto the floor of the crater from the top of Ingatati Hill. Now, what you see is you can see everywhere in the crater floor from Ingatati Hill. And conversely, if you're out there wandering around, like Adam and Eve, having a good day, and God says, you see up on that hill, anywhere in the crater floor except two little spaces over next to a little mound of dirt, anywhere in the crater floor, you can see that hill. And you see those trees on it? Do not go up onto that hill and eat from the fruit from those trees. It's a perfect location so that they don't accidentally eat the fruit. They would have to make an effort to get up to this site and take the fruit. So I'm pretty sure that's where the trees were planted for that reason. As I say, you can see anywhere in the crater from there, and anywhere in the crater, you can look up there and you can see the hill.
In the midst of the garden.
In the midst of the garden. You know, it's an incredible thing, but the animals that live there, I mean, like you've got elephants, you've got antelope, you've got wildebeest, you've got zebras, you've got lions, rhinos, black rhinoceros, all kinds of birds, and some baboons, and there's one cheetah that's apparently returned to live there now that he left for a while, he and his family, but they're back. And we noticed that, you know, we were there in the morning, and we saw zebras mixing with wildebeest, mixing with elephants, just all wandering around, either drinking water, munching, and whatever. The lions were kind of sleepy on the trees and stuff. They, you know, the antelopes don't mind. They know that the lions only take the old animals that are sick or you know, that are weak, and they cull them, and that's what they have for their food. They don't bother the rest, so they'll lay down the paddocks with the lions. Nobody's worried. And we, you know, yeah, I mean, the lion lay down with the lamb. It's the lion with the antelope at this point. But anyway, it's so peaceful. Let me see if I've got a picture on this. We had so many pictures, I'm not sure if they're on this site or not. Where's the lions? Oh, yeah. Look at number 47. There in the crater, one of the trees, we saw a whole pride of lions. This is one of the ladies up there. Good morning. You know, we were probably 10 feet from her. You know, I mean, I'm telling you, this place, you feel the incredible peace of this place. Just an amazing, still peace in there. And, you know, with all these animals, you'd think that there would be noise and chasing and ruckus, but no. Now, the zebra and the wildebeest, on the Discovery Channel, they make shows from time to time showing how they migrate. The wildebeest migrate, you know, in the hundreds of thousands across a river and up into Kenya and then do a loop and come back into Tanzania. Well, it's a thing that people come to see, the wildebeest migration over periods of days and weeks. Well, the wildebeest here in the Garden of Eden do not migrate. Why? Because they don't need to. They got everything they need there to eat. And, yeah, it's an amazing thing. They just don't wander off. This is paradise for them. And, you know, well, when we were up on the top of Vengatati Hill there looking down, the elephants, I think we saw 3 or 4 of them down there, you know, down the hill from us, just wandering around and munching at the grass and things. The grass is very rich for them there. And when we first came up to the rim there a couple of days before this, before we went down into the garden, you'll see in slide 51, we just leaned out the window, probably 8 feet from us was this elephant, just munching breakfast, and, hey, how you going? Fine, I'm eating breakfast. Going. And this is how close it was. Just, you know, an amazing, peaceful place for all these animals. I can't encourage people enough to make that, you know, a trip that it's on your bucket list before you die. You've got to make the trip to the Ngoro Crater, to the Garden of Eden, and you'll see what so many other people have already felt there. You sense it. And we've looked at blogs. People have been there, and they talk about the experience and some of their photos on the internet and things. And a great number of them say, if there's a Garden of Eden on Earth, this has to be the place. Well, I proved it. It is the Garden of Eden. And they could sense it. It was that obvious that this is such a beautiful, wonderful place. You know, it had to be the Garden of Eden, and it was, and is. Anyway.
So to put humanity there, they would be protected on all sides by the crater rim.
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, just 5 miles outside the rim, let me see if I've got a picture of that you can look at. Let me just see up here. Yeah, go to slide 67 and zoom it up, and you'll see a little yellow pin on the upper left that says Old Dubai Gorge.
Yes.
That's where the Leakeys, Mr. and Mrs. Leakey, where they found the oldest hominid bones, you know, so far. Actually, I think some newer ones, or older ones have been found recently, but this, until probably 2 months ago, was where the oldest human bones were found, you know, hominids. But they were hominids, not the Adamic creation, which had the Spirit of God connected inside of them. They were more like hominid animals, bipedal animals. They weren't. God-man. They weren't what Adam and Eve were. And of course, when Cain went out to the east to marry some woman, it was probably not the God-filled woman. It was one of these other type of creatures. In those days, when the earth was smaller and when the continents were together, India touched Somalia, northeast Africa there, and Madagascar touched up to the coast of Tanzania, and a river went around it, and then India butted up to the side of Madagascar. And that was east of Eden. And when Cain left and went over to east of Eden, up to the Indus River Valley, and took a wife in that area, he was marked with a blood mark to not kill this man because he's being punished. The bindi, the B-I-N-D-I mark in the Hindu custom, that red mark, they don't know where it came from. From ages past, they would wear that red mark on their forehead. These were the descendants of Cain. And
really?
Yeah. And, not everyone died in the flood, I got to tell you. We found this out a number of ways, but in the old language, there was certainly a series of sweeping tidal waves around the planet from an asteroid impact that hit eastern India and broke the continents up and did all kinds of things that killed most of the life forms on the surface, but not all. Some in Egypt survived, some in India survived, some in Central America survived, and in South America, little pockets. And because of this, we know that there could be some direct descendants of Cain in those that were the bindi, historically anyway. But the interesting thing I found also is that the Indus River Valley, right up into India, Indus is, from Indu, Hebrew, ancient Hebrew word meaning the men shall wander as fugitives. And that's like Cain. And so,
yes.
Hindu, Indus Valley, do you see that? That was Cain's land. And there are two old cities, maybe three, that they've discovered, Harappas and Mohenjo-Daro and Quetta. And we think Quetta may have been the one that Cain built for his son Enoch, not the other Enoch, but Cain's son Enoch.
Right.
All these things fit together. I mean, they just really fit together. And you come right back to the Garden of Eden, where all this started. The Kilimanjaro, by the way, is the cherub that they talk about that guarded the Garden of Eden. It wasn't to keep people out of the Garden of Eden. If you look at Cherub in ancient Hebrew, it's a strong, powerful thing that's strong, like it can move mountains. And if you see the description that they put in English, that it was a cherub with a flaming sword, it was a Cherub with a spinning, sparkling fire above it, and that's Kilimanjaro volcano. It's big, and it was in those days they were afraid of it.
Is that Kilimanjaro there on 71? I see a volcano in the background.
Let me get to 71. No, actually, that's Old Doino, the mountain of God. They call it. The natives have called it that for thousands of years. Again, mentioned in the scriptures. Yeah, that's the mountain of God. It's the only existing, still active soda volcano, which operates at half the temperature of normal volcanoes, and it still erupts. And it's at the northern tip of the Ngoro Plateau, just right off the edge of it. I think you can see it on image 70. If you go to 70 and look at the top right-hand area to the right of that yellow arrow, you'll see kind of a volcano there. And if you zoom in on that, that's Old Doino from above. That's the mountain of God there. See it? Okay. Yeah. Look, these things, Satan walked amongst the hot stones of Eden. Hot stone, let's see, 45 volcanoes. Would that make hot stones? Duh.
Yes.
And the mountain of God that he walked to and fro, and that was a hot mountain. It's still there today. In fact, he's going to end up, his body's probably going to be tossed there, as I remember scripture, that people will be amazed at that small, frail thing that's thrown down when he's finally punished, but and killed, but or banned from his body, however you want to say it. But anyway, now the Cherub I looked at it originally in more modern Hebrew, and it was something like, boy, a cherub was like God's field marshal, or, Mr. Nasty. If you get a cherub chasing you, you're dead meat, because a cherub can move mountains. Well, actually, the older version is that a cherub is a strong burning mountain, a volcano. And Kilimanjaro means mountain of light in some of the dialects there. And it was the sparkling light that used to come from the center volcano and the two on either side. So that was to mark the pathway, to keep the pathway to Eden, to the Garden of Eden. And so in Moses' time, they were referring to it as the marker that went and pointed to the west, where the Garden of Eden was. And again, when the earth was straight up and down, this was east, due east of the Garden of Eden by 23.5 degrees. It's off now, but it was there. And that's, there are just so many little things like that prove that this was the location. Okay, in Old Dueño, that's really a fascinating place. We actually got some of that red dirt from the garden and put it in a bag and brought it home. We're going to share it with people. Yeah, we're going to put it in some little glass vials that you can, like a piece of jewelry you can wear on a chain, or a wrist piece or something like that. For people that can't get there, we want them to be able to share in that. Okay.
The probable site of the Tree of Life on 74. Is that likewise in the midst of the garden?
Well, it is in the midst of the garden. It's right in the. It's
in
not
the center?
In the direct center. It's slightly off. In fact, let me see if we can see a better picture of that in that big drawing. Let's see. Okay. If you look at image 67, that map there, and you'll see right in front of you that you see path to Engatati Hill, that little white line.
Yes.
Okay, at the very end of that, to the left of the arrow, that little spot right there, that is where Engatati Hill is. So it's in the midst of, but not in the direct center of, the crater of the garden. Wow. That's where it is. I mean, just thing after thing comes to fruition, and proves that this is the Garden of Eden.
Well, the fact that there are fig trees, that relates right immediately up to modern times, the parable of the fig trees. He's alluding back to something.
Yeah, I agree. And that 74 you're talking about, the probable side of the Tree of Life, that's the side that we couldn't get to on the top of Engatati Hill because the rains had blocked the road going back around to the backside to come up, and so they didn't.
Why would they do that?
Why would they do what? Block the road?
Well, yeah.
Well, the rains, the mud makes it so you can't get your Jeep up there. You have to trek through a lot of mud to get up there. It was only circumstance of weather, nothing preventing you to get there. But it is interesting to see that little mound of dirt, which on Google Earth, it's a high altitude thing for the rest of the thing, maybe by 10 or 15 feet. When I say high, it's higher than the flat tabletop. But that one, seeing that mound of grass and green stuff there over on the other side, the other hump on Engatati Hill, really encouraged us that was the site of one of the trees. Which one, I don't know, but you'll see in slide, where is she? Slide 63. Christina is on this side of Engatati Hill. She's right up in the middle of it, taking photos of the grass and the flowers there. But she's right where we think the other tree was planted, in that area right there. I tell you, it was an incredible feeling because you're standing and walking where Adam and Eve and even God walked on that dirt. Now just think about that for a minute. I mean, if that doesn't make the hair on the back of your neck stand out, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah. Well, and the peacefulness of it.
Oh, look.
And the animals all getting along almost like it will in the millennial reign.
Yes.
Fascinating.
And we were one of 3, maybe 4 Land Cruisers in the whole 110 square miles that day. We might see the other guys every now and then on the other side or down one of the side roads there inside the crater, but other than that, we didn't see anything but animals, right? In about a month, maybe less, it's going to be high tourist season. And last year they had 600,000 visitors to the crater, right? So our guide was telling us, Ellie was saying to us, in about 3 or 4 weeks, he says, we're going to be bumper to bumper, like a train of Land Cruisers going around these roads. We'll have hundreds of people, hundreds of cars with people in going around this crater. So you've got it at a very quiet and peaceful time. Prince Charles took his boys there.
What makes this such an attractive site? Is this something unconscious in people's minds that they want to go there?
Well, they wouldn't know about it unless somebody had been there, filmed it first and shared the information like UNESCO. And, the Prime Minister of Japan went, Bill Clinton and his family went, Prince Charles took his boys there. A lot of very notable people into conservation have gone there, and they've come back with glowing reports saying, look, this is such a beautiful, wonderful place. Now, that doesn't mean they're saying it's the Garden of Eden, but they sensed that it was something special and had to be preserved. That's why UNESCO made it a conservation area. And this is going to be, they call it Africa's Garden of Eden, but it is the world's Garden of Eden. That's the only difference in that sentence.
Wow.
If you go there, I'm telling you, you see a lot of documentaries about the wildebeest running in herds and dust and, lions fighting off flies and that kind of stuff. Well, that's interesting. That's cool. But they leave out all of the plants, the trees, the scenery, the water, the fig trees. And that's what we filmed. It's just nobody thought to do that. They only wanted to show these wild animals and stuff that were, being peaceful. So we're going to fill in the blanks here for a lot of folks. It's a wonderful thing.
Well, what's interesting to me is if all the world leaders are going there, basically, I'm just curious from a psychological or unconscious viewpoint, maybe they know that's where the origins came from.
I wondered about that, Stewart. I really did. And maybe when they have the New World Order, then they'll formally announce it or something like that. And they're doing something there. UNESCO is putting these concrete kind of trapezoidal heavy stones that got numbers on them. They're putting them in certain places all over the crater and the whole plateau. And nobody seems to know why. It's like they're making grid markers or something like that for mapping. And so definitely they're making plans for gridding the whole area for something. I'm sure they're going to preserve it, but I don't know what those grid markers are for at the moment. It's just there are places there like hidden up in the sides of the crater on the inside of it. There are little huts, most of them like tin shed huts with maybe a place for the guards to cook a meal or whatever. They spend the night up there with their night vision, and during the day they look with their binoculars, looking for poachers trying to kill the animals, like the rhinoceros and the elephant for their tusks, because that used to happen. They've now stopped the Maasai from getting in there and doing that because it was a very lucrative thing to get an elephant tusk out. It was worth a lot of money. So they have these guards that live there full-time around the rim guarding the animals. And they can see so well that when our team, we went over to what's called the Three Trees site, and it was this area was occupied by the Datoga native tribe for maybe 3,000 years. And 180 years ago, they had a battle. The Maasai from Kenya came over and said, "We want your grazing lands," and killed 3 of the chiefs and a lot of the warriors for the Datoga in bow and arrow fights and that kind of stuff. So they were kicked out, and they lived south of the Ngoro Plateau. But every year, the Datoga elders are allowed to come back into the crater to the site of Three Trees, which we went to. And at Three Trees is where the chiefs that were killed and some of the other notables were buried. And so they spend 2 or 3 days in ceremony there, and then they have to leave the crater. Well, at the site of Three Trees, or the Three Trees thing, whatever, we were looking for the graves because they're just piles of rocks, bigger piles for bigger chiefs and that kind of stuff. Well, we couldn't see at our level where they were. Our rangers with us, they were looking around trying to find it. One of them gets a phone call on his iPhone from up on the side of the rim where one of the guards is watching us. I mean, and you see how big this place is. He's miles away. And he says, "Okay, I'm going to tell you where the graves are. Move to your right 100 meters, blah, blah, blah." And he directed us from up on the side of the mountain to where these graves were, which is quite incredible. I mean, they must have terrific telescopes up there. But anyway, it was kind of. Oh, and I didn't tell you this, but we were up in at the top at the waters of Eden, where they came up in the ground, to Kumnana. That Maasai woman, she was sitting there talking to us, sitting on a piece of of dirt there in the ruts and talking away in Ma'a language, and all of a sudden her phone rings, and inside of her red, blanket around her, it's her cell phone ringing, and it's just kind of incongruous at 10,000 feet altitude out there in the boonies with the Maasai woman. Her phone rings. we nearly fell over laughing. I couldn't believe it.
High tech, low tech.
But anyway, the Garden of Eden, it is real. Put it on your bucket list.
Do you think they know what they're dealing with and just not telling anybody? Yeah.
You mean at the UNESCO or at the Conservancy? Where?
Well, either UNESCO or the people that guided you in, even.
The people that guided us in.
The people you worked with.
They did not know. I'm sure of it. It was the good Lord had His hand on us all the way. First of all, in slide 57, they took a picture of me talking to this man from Tanzania, from the area, and his name was Otis Adamson, son of Adam. He was explaining, that. Yeah,
another clue.
We thought, yeah. And we said, what is this area called? And he says, well, I don't know, but I know the area. I've been there, and so, this is how you get there. And so, anyway, the lodge where we stayed, Sopa Lodge, which is a really good lodge, probably the best one there. I mean, it's not the most expensive, but it's the best one for view and everything. The manager was his name is Dedan, the sons of Dedan from the Bible. And some of the staff, one of the guys was named Nathan. We were getting clues all along the way that this is the way, Anyway, the whole trip was really kind of the good Lord had His hand on us to meet these people. And when we went into the south gate of the rim of the crater, we were just stopping to take $50 and pay the fee to get into the conservancy, which everybody has to pay. And while our guide was doing this, I wandered into the map shop and gift shop that they've got there at the gate. Mm-hmm. Not a big place, it's just a small room, probably 12 by 12 size, feet. And I was talking to the guy there that was manning the cash register, and I said, let me show you something. I rolled out, my map of the Ngoro thing, which I've just showed you, in slide 70, whatever. Mm-hmm. I said, what do they call this place up here? Up there where that little yellow square is. He said, oh, I don't know. I said, well, have you got a map that gives a name to it? I haven't ever seen one. He said, no, we don't even have a name for it. It's just a place, I guess. So we were talking away, and I was explaining why we wanted to go there, and he got very interested. And all of a sudden, I looked around, and the chief ranger had come in, and another old guy, must have been about 70, came in, and he was from the area. Another old guy like me. Yeah, Holly's laughing. But he lived up in that area. He said, oh, yeah, that's Kumnana. And we didn't understand him clearly because he didn't have all of his teeth. But anyway, we figured out later what he was saying. And I looked around, and we had that little shop was packed with people from the conservancy, all listening to what I was saying. And I had my driver, the guide, go get my computer, and I had Google Earth. We could get Wi-Fi there, so I dialed into Google Earth in 3D and spun around the top of that, like we were flying over it. And you ought to have seen the eyes. They all got big eyes, and wow, this is cool, right? And so the chief ranger there, Malita, he made a quick call in the other room, and he came back and he said, I'm going to take you over to meet the deputy director. We're going to get permission. We're going to take you up there. We're backing this. This is really good. And so it all started with just a chance meeting there that we found the people that we needed, the connections that we needed. I tried for weeks beforehand, and they wouldn't even answer my emails or phone calls over there. But this guy, one of the local, guard commanders there, young fellow, he was interested, and he knew all the right people, said all the right things, and bang, we had carte blanche for the whole Garden of Eden. We had just go anywhere we want, take anything we wanted, pictures and everything. So the good Lord had His hand on us from the start.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And
no such thing as coincidence.
No, and I'm editing the film at the moment, just the first parts of it. We've got hours and hours I've got to go through, but we've got this software that allows you to remove some of the vibration of your Land Cruiser as it bounces over the ruts while you're filming.
Mm-hmm.
It's called smooth vision. And there are ways that I can set it so that as we come in through the acacia trees to the Garden of Eden, it's not slow motion, but it's smooth, like, mystical motion down through the gateway to Eden. I haven't figured out the soundtrack for that yet, but it's just so incredibly beautiful and magical. It's just hard for me to say any more about it. It's just something you have to experience, I guess. But it's life-changing. It is life-changing.
Wow. So what actually brought you to that area for our listeners in the first place?
Well, actually, look at slide 86. See where it says X marks the spot? See that X there?
Yes. I was just going to ask you about that.
Indiana Jones map. It said X is the spot. Go there. But seriously, I since 1987, 88, somewhere back in there, I've been trying to research and find where the Garden of Eden was by using printed maps in those days to backtrack large rivers that would have separated continents, like the Indian Ocean has opened up between India and Africa, but they used to be close enough that there was a river there. And of course, the Indus River is there, and there was an old riverbed running up through Iran. There was the Nile, and then there was the Red Sea. So I backtracked these things. I said, look, Euphrates and Tigris, that people say that's where the Garden of Eden was over there. How do the rivers of the Tigris and the Euphrates flow into the Persian Gulf, where they say the garden is, or into Israel? How do they flow into that? These rivers came out of the land of Eden, and the Catholic scholars in the probably the 1600s to 1800s said that they had determined that the Garden of Eden had to be in a high place for the water velocity to run out and surround these countries. And so even that told me that I had to look for high places. But by tracing these rivers back up into the Gulf of Aden between Djibouti and Yemen, I found 3 rivers there, and the 4th I was trying to figure. And I thought I had found it in 1989. I put it in the Vindicator Scrolls that it had to be in the Afar Triangles where the garden was. Wasn't happy with that, but I thought, well, look, where does that area get its water from? Now, if the Garden of Eden was fed by Eden's water, there had to be water coming in. I found, here's this great, huge pathway of water that used to come down from the Great East African Rift. So I followed it up foot by foot all the way up to the source of the Great East African Rift water flow. And that led me to a soda lake that was fed by, wait for it, 3 great streams that chewed huge gorges in the side of a mountain. And I went up, and that was where Komnana was. That's where the crater of Ngora was. And I thought, I wonder if anybody in the area has ever said anything about this, like legends about Garden of Eden and that kind of stuff. And the first page on the internet I opened up said, Africa's Garden of Eden in Ngora crater. I nearly fell off my chair. It was there. And that's the short story of it. But it was months and months and years of tracing and looking at clues like, Indiana Jones and a treasure map to find this place. But I can guarantee you right now 100% that is God's Garden of Eden for Adam and Eve. There's no question about it.
So why would they call it a Garden of Eden on their own? And even if they call it Africa's Garden of Eden, it seems odd that they would call it that.
I wonder if it's the distinction of the sons of Ham, the darker-skinned people and the lighter-skinned people have this animus between them or something. Or I don't know. I mean, it's long-standing problems between the Middle East and Africa, particularly Israel. But that's the only thing I can think of is that they didn't want to admit that Africa holds the Garden of Eden. It's these primitive people hold this valuable thing. I think there's that resistance to accepting it, but we're going to change that.
Well, what's interesting is, you had the Lion King movie, right?
Yeah.
And where was that based? And then you had the movie Out of Africa.
Oh, Out of Africa. I stood where Meryl Streep and Robert Redford had their picnic on the side of the crater rim
Oh, really?
Definitely. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Out of Africa, the music, the soundtrack were just wonderbar. I was just telling one of my sons up in the mines over in Australia, he was out, driving one of the big ore trucks, and had his iPod on, and he just read my email about, Garden of Eden and Ngoro and blah, blah, blah. He said, what came onto my iPod right then was the soundtrack from Out of Africa. Isn't that cool?
Wow. Well, I know that a lot of, I can't say a lot, but I have read where they claim that early humans came from out of Africa.
Oh, yeah, look, there's no question about that. I mean, they've done studies on the mitochondrial Eve, trace DNA portions from all over the planet. And all the roads lead back to one little spot at the Omo Valley, just maybe 100 miles off the Ngoro Plateau. Remember, Adam and Eve were kicked out, and we're pretty sure that they settled in the Omo Valley, which all these biological markers point to. So nearly all races can put their genetic markers back to there. And if that's the case, then that also tells you that there must have been other survivors from the flood. Otherwise, all the markers would go to Turkey, where Noah got out of the boat. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They can track the migration pattern of the DNA out of the Omo Valley in Kenya and down the Great East African Rift into Yemen and into Saudi Arabia, and that's where the incursion of the fallen ones, the crossbreeding between fallen angels and humans occurred. And, it was just a natural migration path downhill into Saudi Arabia. And in fact, the Arabs say that they have Adam's grave, and who is it? It wasn't Seth. I'm trying to think of the other one that they've got. At least Adam's grave, they say, in a volcano that's extinct there on an island on the southern tip of Yemen. And Eve's grave is up near Mecca somewhere, up in that area. They've got a shrine there. So their legends say that Adam and Eve ended up there and were buried there. So that tells you something. We need to know more about Saudi Arabia. We need to get permission to go in and film and do archaeological digs, which hopefully this current Prince Mohammed bin Salman will allow, because he's opening up the country and wants to find these things out. But I also think he's going to be, the first, the Antichrist. But anyway, we just get the Antichrist permission, we can get in there and find out what happened in Saudi Arabia.
Well, he's been indisposed lately. He's disappeared.
He has, and we're going to know more about it in the next couple of weeks. There's a public thing he's got to be at that's going to be, I'm sure, widely photographed just to be sure he's alive. And maybe he was wounded. I don't know. I mean, he's been such a media hound for so long that for him to go silent like this for weeks, a month, over a month, is very unusual. So did he get a head wound? Did he get some kind of a wound and he recovered and he's going to be the bad dude at this time? Everything else points to him, but who knows?
Yeah. Wow. Well, okay, Saudi Arabia, would that have the connection? I'm trying to think of a connection between Saudi's Area 51, which you found, and the fallen ones and the Garden of Eden. I mean, it seems like there's ties coming up here.
Yeah, there are. I mean, this prince is building his city called Neom, N-E-O-M, and it's thousands of square miles. It's going to be incorporated in this huge city, but he's built it right over the top of the southwest tip of Saudi Arabia there, and it completely encompasses the Mount Sinai, the real one there in Saudi Arabia. So he's building this city, making a historical and entertaining place right over the top of where God delivered the Ten Commandments to Moses. And I just find that rather interesting that he's doing that.
Yeah. And I'm very curious about UNESCO's interest in this place. It just seems like there's something going on behind the scenes that nobody's talking about.
Yeah. I talked to a pastor, an African pastor, sometime back that has the Prime Minister Netanyahu's ear when he's in Israel. They talk together, and this pastor said that he was approached by two men in suits at a meeting he was at in Israel. I think it was in Jerusalem, and he said he was pulled off to the side of this meeting in this hall and escorted to a little side room, and they said, Pastor such and such, we know you're interested in what is about to happen here, fulfilling prophecy, and we're going to tell you that the children of Israel, when they run to escape the Antichrist at this time, they will flee to the Garden of Eden in Tanzania at the Ngoro crater. They told him that before we even met. So when he heard me talking about it, he got on the phone. He says, do you realize that that's where Israel's going to run to? When the flood is sent after, they're going to run there and not to, the Petra. And I said, well, I didn't know that, but okay. So I started watching, as you can do in the news. Israel and Tanzania are making all kinds of diplomatic overtures, setting up embassies in both places, and trade agreements. So Israel and Tanzania are getting real close, and it's probably because of what they know.
Yeah. Well, of course, it's like any top secret thing. They're not going to, you can pick up clues, but they're never going to say anything.
No, but that's all right. They need to have a quiet place to go when it's time.
Yeah.
Another thing, too, I was looking here while we're talking at slide 77. It's actually a video recording made of a bird, this beautiful yellow bird. Just as we pulled up to one of the ponds in the Garden of Eden there in the crater floor, we pulled up, and, of course, our Land Cruiser has one of these lift lids on the top so you can lift the lid up and film out the top of the vehicle if you want. Well,
yes.
Ours was up to, just to keep cool and everything. I was sitting in the front seat, and Christine was behind me with her Samsung iPhone type thing. And if you click on 77, let me just do that and turn the volume up.
Yeah, you can see him singing.
Oh my God.
So you can play that for yourself on that slide, but that little guy just did that, and then he flew off. He's welcome to the Garden of Eden and flew off. Oh, wow. What a wonderful place. What a wonderful place.
Well, it sounds like they know something they're not telling anybody, to me.
But then I have
a conspiratorial mind, so that's the way I think.
Well, that's why we want to get so much of this on film and the documentation, so that if they ever close it so you can't go, at least we can show people what was there, what is there. And that's if we're here. I mean, certainly the tribulation may start and it'll be academic anyway, but
yeah. Well,
yeah. Oh,
Larry, you got any questions?
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Stan, go ahead.
Okay, well, when we first were going down that road I was telling you about with the acacia lining the road down into the garden, just after the canopy opened up and it was in the fields, on the side of the crater, off to our right, maybe 40 feet or so, is an elephant pushing over a young acacia tree, for breakfast. And so we stopped to film him go crash and knock the tree over and start eating. It was welcome to the Garden of Eden, guys. I'm busy now. Go on. Well, anyway, Larry, do you have any questions that you wanted me to answer before we get short of time, too much shorter?
Well, I did put it in for an hour and a half. You're certainly welcome to stay if you want to.
Well, it depends on what else to talk about.
I did have some questions for you. Larry, do you have any questions?
Well, I was just going to mention the fact to Stan that it sounds almost like he was visiting a mystical place, and I was wondering if possible, you're well aware of the anointing, Stan, and even some of the old saints, had an anointing of their bones even, biblically, and I was wondering, was there an anointing, a peaceful anointing in that place that you could detect, or possibly are people feeling an anointing in that place and being drawn to it without even them knowing why?
Yes, I bet.
It's 19 hours.
Oh, wow. Yes. Let me turn it off. It reminds me to get up and take a walk every hour so I don't get flat-bottomed. The people that are there, I don't know. It's hard to say because we didn't interact with the other groups that much because they were all off on their own safaris or whatever. But the locals, once we started talking about it, you could see that they just were very excited. They felt that. But I don't know that I would say there was an anointing that I felt other than just the incredible peace that suddenly descended on us there in the crater floor. We all noticed it. Maybe that was the anointing you're speaking of. But it's almost like you want to be quiet, like you're in church. It's just, wow, that kind of a feeling.
Well, I was going to mention, too, Stan, and I know you and Stewart remember a guy by the name of Gary Vay who wrote about, an end time, or actually petroglyphs that told of an end time that fire would come from heaven. Anyway, what I wanted to mention, you mentioned UNESCO was in that area, too. There was a guy in Gary Vay's books, a very mystical person that he called J.J. Hurtak, and I think you spell that Hurtak, I believe, that was involved with the UN, and he was going around locating sacred sites around the world and involving the United Nations and also implementing either some type of, if not military, then police or some type of private security around all of these places. And it seemed like to me they were marking sacred sites or ancient sites around the world that possibly they were looking to some future events.
I didn't know that. I wasn't familiar with his work, but I'm sure that there are a lot of things that would all fit together to define this puzzle for us if we could just get all the data together in one spot.
Yeah, J.J. was involved, Hurtak was involved in the UFO enigma and Mars. He even wrote some articles on life on Mars and that, somebody was up there, et cetera, which would go probably into the anti-gravity stuff and whatnot. I wanted to ask, Earth expansion. We're having increasing rifts, sinkholes, volcanic activity, of course, as you know, earthquakes. How fast do you think in the days of Peleg the actual expansion took place? Do you think it's rapid once it starts?
Oh, yeah. I don't think it was like inches per year like we're seeing now. There was a large asteroid. I'm pretty sure it was an asteroid, not a comet, from the geological evidence in the ocean. But this thing was about 12 to 15 miles in diameter, traveling at an angle of about 33 degrees on the horizon, striking the east coast of India. And India used to be a lot longer, and you can see its coastline footprint in the bottom of the ocean there going up into Africa. And when that hit, the backwash put 2 miles deep of ocean bed over the southeast corner of Saudi Arabian Peninsula there to Oman. The oil companies have showed us, their surveys of that. That's how big a backsplash that asteroid made. It pushed Australia away from the coast of India down into where it is now. It made the Indonesian islands, Philippines and all that, shoved them around in an arc over to where they are today. And that kind of a thing may have taken a few weeks or months. We know that one of the Egyptian records, one of the pharaohs that was reported in, what's his name, Earth in Upheaval, who wrote that?
Benkoski or whatever his name is.
Anyway, I'll think of it in a minute. Old age is gripping me, but anyway, he was recording one of the pharaohs was complaining that when will the earth stop this moaning and groaning? It's keeping me awake at night and this kind of stuff. And I suspect that that's giving us a time frame of months, maybe years, while this expansion was catastrophic when continents were shoving, into each other, splitting and that kind of stuff. I don't know that it waited 100 years till the time of Peleg, but it may have. I would assume that the breakup and the separation would have been within months, if not sooner, of the impact. However, if it waited 100 years before it started, fine. It would have been catastrophic quickly, and then slowing down, on an exponential curve to where we are now. I do not believe in this gradual continental drift stuff. It was catastrophic and sudden in geological terms.
Yeah, I know it says in the days of Peleg the earth was divided, so that's why I was curious.
He was named, at the time of the division, but we didn't know it was the division of people, like when the Tower of Babel was collapsed, there was a division of the land. So we don't know what that division was relating to. So, but it's right around the same period of time within 100 years, so it could very well be the same thing. Velikovsky, who wrote the other books.
Yeah. What's your take on what's going on in Hawaii?
Well, it's what I expected over a period of time. It's just happening quicker, than I thought. But if you'll look on the maps, you'll see Hawaii, and then you see a smaller island to the upper left, and then a smaller island that's the upper left, and then there's submerged islands, like a trail. And what has happened is the skin of the earth, the thin mantle, has moved over a hot plume down inside the earth where things are molten. And as the skin moved, at a certain speed, they would allow some of that molten stuff to come up and make a mound or a subsea volcano. And that's why those are submerged on the upper left of that string of islands behind the big island. Is it was moving faster then, but as the skin of the earth slowed down, it allowed more of this magma to come up and form volcanoes and islands. Now, we're slowed down so much that with that hot spot, it's creating ledges on the the state side of the big island. Kilauea is forming what would have normally been another island. It's an extension of the existing island. It's going to fill up and fill the bays with more land because the Earth's skin is not moving as fast any longer over that hot spot. So that, to me, is an island building process of the existing island. And we will see, a lot of deposits of stuff around there because of this almost stagnant motion of the Earth's surface over that area.
Do you think it'll implode on itself at all?
Well, hard to say. I do think that we're going to see, more matter come out and freeze. The magma make land mass eventually extending the island. Probably a good time to invest in offshore properties off the northeast side. But that's certainly of interest, and the Guatemalan volcano is of interest. We have a friend down there, Bob, who sends us photos and stuff showing the ash fall in his house from the Guatemalan volcano. We have volcanoes on the planet, going off all the time, but in these places, these populated areas, they're a change in the pattern of where they're erupting. As you pointed out, the sinkhole phenomenon may well be, as I suspect, the Earth stretching a bit and expanding. And I'm pretty sure with the model I've developed for gravitational fields that as planets age, as stars age, as galaxies age, they increase in diameter until they pop or break up and, are gone back to dust, I guess. But we're seeing this here in the earthquakes. There are some drastic changes occurring in the geology of the planet. I think part of the normal aging of the planet, but also kind of aggravated by behavior of the sun. I think we're going to see some definite climate shifts with this current spate of activity in the sun. It's not so much sunspot activities, but coronal holes opening up. And we know that the Russian data from the 1950s showed that the sun has consumed over half of its hydrogen supply back then. And if you realize or accept the fact that our radiometric dating, telling how old the universe is and stuff like that, is way out because of the era of the speed of light that they've calculated from the Big Bang. If you accept that, are you there still?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay.
Yep.
Hey.
Hello?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, sorry. Holly was trying to move something here. I thought I'd cut it off. Yeah, this one. Yeah, sorry. where was I? Yeah. Okay. The sun itself, I think, is going to undergo a rather rapid change, not in millions of years, but in hundreds, maybe tens. And then at the end of the millennial period, which is ahead of us, maybe 1,010, 1,020 years from now, that not only will the sun and our solar system and our galaxy be consumed in a fire, fervent heat, but the whole universe as we know it will be destroyed. But yet a new heaven and a new earth will be created. And I believe we're seeing the beginnings of what could be a red giant stage of our own star, not millions of years away either, but enough so that it will throw off light, throw off radiation, throw off chunks of the surface of the sun in like hot dust that will fry 1/3 of the planet that's facing it. And I think that's what the Revelation speaks of, the fish boiling in the sea and being killed and the green grass and trees all being consumed, because at any one point in time 1/3 of the surface area of the planet is facing the sun in like direct radiation. So I think that's why it says 1/3. It'll be a sudden event that will cook one side of the planet there, 1/3 of it, and that will definitely change the climate from the heat it injects into the system. Violent storms, violent earthquakes, volcanoes. It'll take a while for things to stabilize until the end of the millennial period.
I know in the book of Isaiah it talks about the moon will give off the light of the sun, and the sun will give off 7 times the light it does now. Would that be classified as a mini nova, or how would you classify that?
Well, I think, yeah, we're still learning. The scientists are astronomers about how stars behave under certain circumstances, but I think that when it throws off something like that, we're looking at the beginning of a red giant stage. We looked at a star over in Monoceros cluster here a couple years ago that in the space of like 9 months, it threw off a shell of debris that went through its whole stellar system and out into space. And we watched it and filmed it. And, when I say we filmed it, our scientists did, and I took that movie and presented it on my website to show how quickly this dust cloud can move through an entire solar system. These are catastrophic events. They're not like millions of years or even thousands of years in the happening. So we may be seeing that kind of a phase state change in our own star.
It seems to be turning. I mean, everybody's saying how blue-white it is now, where it was yellow not very long ago.
Well, that's ultraviolet, isn't it?
Yeah.
We know since 1992. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, they're giving warnings now on the UV. It's really off the charts in some areas. Is that all part of this change, do you think?
Oh, definitely. Look, I know, having talked to the Air Force officer in charge over down in Australia, that we are seeing at least 2 spectral frequencies in the ultraviolet range that have suddenly appeared, since 1992. And in those days, we still had a pretty intact ozone layer. But while I was down there in Australia, one of the holes drifted over, the ozone layer holes drifted over Perth, where I was, and the ultraviolet was allowed to get through unfiltered. It was so intense that it burned me through my blue jeans driving down the highway. And women had to wear sunglasses to hang out their white linens. They were warned by the authorities here to do that, or you may suffer blindness from it. That's how bad the ultraviolet is. Now that our magnetic field is weakening, really weakening faster, it's growing in its weakness, and that is our shield that creates the ozone layer and sustains it. So when that goes, the ultraviolet is going to just bathe everybody, and it will be like I felt there, plus some. You'll be having skin rashes, diarrhea, nausea, disorientation, just from that alone.
Well, I know the bots. Are you familiar with Cliff High?
Yeah.
Well, he was talking about. He called it sun disease. Is the way they worded it. That it would just what you said. That it would cause people to sometimes even become like zombies. Well,
intense burning of that, I'm sure, will alter people significantly, even mentally as well. So, yeah, I mean, when this was happening, when that ozone hole, we had one drift off of the southern magnetic anomaly in the Atlantic. Well, it spread and drifted up in toward the islands of Central America and off to the east of that. And I was talking to a guy by phone there when that happened, and it was so bad that children were being taken out of school that day and home with this rash and with the nausea and diarrhea, and adults were getting it as well, that were working in the sun. So they were feeling it worse than I felt it, much worse. So that's going to be a thing all over the planet when it happens. And I guess you could call it a disease from the sun, yeah.
Well, I know on, Larry, what's the name of that space page where they track radiation? And that's a straight line curve up.
Is that a NASA page or where?
Space Weather, is it, Larry?
Yeah, spaceweather.com, and then also there's a government UV rating. And I over my area here, Stan, we've had a lot of, you can feel this through this. Actually, I wear long sleeve shirts, and it comes right through your shirt. And we have a lot of electromagnetic activity up in this area, too, so it's a weird deal. But I wanted to ask you, Stan, Kilauea, recently I saw a deal on your site and went to the article and read it where there's been a magnetic field reversal in the volcano. What is going on there?
Well, I think I caught a glimpse of that article, too, about the magnetic field reversal, but it's over longer periods of time. We do know from NASA data that's published on their site, they've used a supercomputer to model the magnetic fields within the Earth, and there are 3 pairs of north-south magnetic fields tumbling around inside the Earth, slowly but still there. So maybe that explains why it's also erupting in addition to its magnetic field reversing, is that one of those pairs may be close to there flipping upside down. I don't know, but that's my guess on it.
Wow.
Have you heard any more about the Antarctica situation that's going on down there? Any news from any of your people about what's going on? I mean, they're very, very quiet about it.
Well, I haven't heard anything new other than what we all heard a few months back about that. Obviously, if there is something there of that description, we're not going to be told much about it right now anyway. When they do reveal the fact that we've got alien critters around, the fallen ones, whatever, maybe at that time they will admit to these places and fairly well document it and film, and so that we can know that they were there and they can spread the lie that they were our creators and that kind of stuff. They're probably holding it all for the big announcement.
Well, I'm sure most of the human race is going to buy into it.
I'm afraid you're right. It's just people aren't paying attention. They just don't want to know. That's one of the reasons that we went down to the Garden of Eden thing, was to prove to people that don't read the Bible, aren't interested in all the myths and legends of the ancient times, to prove how important and how accurate it was that our Creator did do that, and that the Bible is correct, and therefore some of the things it talks about is going to happen soon is extremely important for their health, and long-term life wherever they are. But unfortunately, they're not listening that much. So we're going to reap the benefits of it.
I was listening to Cliff High. He was giving quite a long speech, I guess, or interview, and he mentioned that some time ago, many, many years ago, he was given some pictures of that were taken down in Antarctica. Guy was military, and he was sworn to secrecy that he could not release those pictures until after he died. But the pictures evidently show what he said was a giant pyramid. It had a huge entrance, and the steps were 14 feet from one step to the next step, if they were steps. Well, that would mean that an entity would have to be, 50, 70 feet tall to have steps that high?
I think some of the records that Steve Quayle quoted in Genesis 6 Giants book would support that, yeah. That's pretty big.
Wow.
And
anything else now, there, Larry? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, the Earth, in the models I've developed for gravity and the age of the universe, the Earth used to be, two-thirds the diameter it is now, but it expanded to where it's now 25%, but, that former diameter. But we were smaller, and when you put the Earth back to where it was original before the impact of that meteor that made the flood, gravity on the Earth, the same amount of mass we had now as we had then, but it's all compact down on a smaller globe. That compactness generated a gravitational field that was about 70% stronger than it is now. And because of the compactness of it, the atmosphere itself was thicker, had more oxygen, and was thicker. That's why those leather-winged flying pedactyls or whatever, how they could fly, and how the large animals back then, dinosaurs, had such huge muscles to work against that gravity. So 70-foot tall being, well, that would have been some kind of probably a hybrid being that was created during that time, probably by Satan and his minions, but they would have to be big-boned and strong musculature to deal with that kind of gravity. The Earth, the atmosphere would have given them some buoyancy to reduce some of the gravitational effects because of the compact, fluid of the air, but not enough to totally negate the 70% increase in gravity.
Well, what's interesting is the Hopis, in one of their legends, say some of these older animals are going to come back, but they wouldn't be anywhere as near as big now, would they? I don't see how they could be sustained.
No, I don't think they will be. They'd have to conform to the environment we have now. Like a dinosaur, well, I don't know how they would do because they'd need more oxygen. We don't have as much oxygen in our atmosphere as they had back then because it's all more concentrated. So, yeah, I've wondered that too, whether Jurassic Park type thing would actually work. Would the animals be able to sustain in our current geology versus where they were originally?
Well, I think I've heard somewhere where a giraffe, for example, they think is about as tall as a head could be, with the heart muscles and everything to pump the blood up all that big neck and whatnot. I don't know if that is a clue or what.
Well, I'm sure that there would have to be something special to do that. I know that in the days of the dinosaurs, like the brontosaurus and stuff, that were tree leaf eaters, they were tall, long-necked beings, or animals, and something had to work to pump the blood for them. I don't know whether they lived primarily in the water marshlands or something like that, where they had support for their body, from the water. But other than that, you'll see a lot of the dinosaurs were squat, strong but squat bodies, which is in keeping with the increased field.
Got any questions?
Well, I was just I was kind of thinking about what Stan was talking about, how he had found a location where Antarctica apparently had been shoved by a meteorite impact up by Saudi Arabia or Africa, and I find that really telling. And I'm wondering if some of the, there are claims that they found people preserved in ice that were quick frozen when that occurred, or right about the time of that occurrence. And I'm wondering if that's not what they found down there in Antarctica, is an entire civilization, some of it giants, that were quick frozen and are still in the same position.
Well, Larry, I couldn't argue with that, because even the records kept by the Egyptian priests that were passed on to Plato, who wrote, about Atlantis, in the records they had, there were 12 sons of God that, descended on Earth and, went their own ways with their cultures. So one of them could have been on what is Antarctica now. Certainly it could have been moved by an asteroid impact. We know that Antarctica and Argentina, there's a groove in the seafloor there where a large asteroid hit. And when I say hit, it didn't come in at a steep angle. It came in at a low angle, which meant that it was probably orbiting rocks or, even, like snowballs, comets, orbiting around the Earth, and came in slowly at a low angle and crashed into the land. It may have occurred at the same time of the one that hit India, because there are at least 5 of these things I could find in the mud maps of the planet that left tracks that even the scientists today are saying, yes, the El Tanin meteor off the coast of southern Argentina, between it and the South Pole, that was a definite slow, low orbit impact, which could have instantly moved, Antarctica to a cold zone at one of the poles, in this case the South Pole, and quick frozen them. So yeah, I have no argument with that. I wish that our scientific cathedrals of science, I should call them, would open their minds and start to think laterally and see these things that are right in front of us.
Yeah, it's too bad. Well, I guess, some of these guys have, I can't think of his name, but he worked for Boston University, and he was trying to tell everybody that that was water erosion, not wind erosion on the Great Sphinx over there in Egypt, and he all but got fired for that. So I guess that, they kind of keep their mouths shut to keep their jobs.
Well, either that or you're excommunicated from the Cathedral of Science. That's the way it goes. You got to play the game.
Yeah, unfortunately, which is a bad loss, really a terrific loss for humanity that this has developed the way it has. Any last comments you'd have, Stan? Fascinating on this Garden of Eden. That's amazing, absolutely amazing.
Well, I don't have any last comments. I don't think I'm talked out, guys. I've just this is probably my fifth day back. I'm still.
Well, we appreciate you coming on.
All right. Well, thank you for the time, guys, and hold your breath. I think it's going to be an interesting ride over the next few weeks.
Yeah, unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess one could look at it that. Lift up your head, see your redemption draweth nigh.
Absolutely, and I hope.
Okay, well, thanks a lot, Stan, for coming on.
Thank you, guys. Lord bless you now. Have a good evening.
Okay.
Thanks, Stan.
Yep.
Bye-bye, Larry.
Larry, what do you got on the Middle East situation?
Well, we've got a report out of DEPCA file that's very interesting. Of course, you know that there was a planned or plotted assassination of Netanyahu and the mayor of Jerusalem, and also the planned bombing of the new U.S. embassy in Jerusalem by the Palestinians and a terror group in Syria that they have uncovered. And at the present time, Netanyahu is in Europe trying to work a deal against the Iranian nuclear deal. And by the way, DEPCA file reported this morning that we are moving more troops and equipment and also into Israel itself. In other words, we're moving troops into Israel and assets into Israel, and we are also topping off the arsenal, if what they say is correct, of Israel's weapons, and I'm talking about advanced weapons. So there is a plan for something soon, Stewart, and it seems to be focusing and aiming at Iran.
Well, that was an interesting comment I thought that Stan made, that the next few weeks were going to be very interesting.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not sure exactly what that meant, but I agree with it, actually. There's something in the wind here coming, and you're probably right. There seems to be a lot of, how do I call it, back channel of even the world leaders gathering together and discussing things off camera, so to speak. So something's in the wind. Something's being planned. What do you think?
At the same time, Stewart, America is totally engrossed with this Trump smokescreen.
Yes, diversionary tactics. That's all diversionary, I think. And I think the American people are about to get hit with things they would never even believe. But anyway, any last words before we shut down?
Well, I would just have to thank Stan for a most incredible presentation. I hope he does a DVD on all of this and gets it out. And like Stan, buckle your seatbelts, folks, if you don't have them buckled, because the next few weeks may be incredible.
Yeah, that's an incredible bunch of pictures he has on his website. Anyway, folks, thanks for tuning in and listening. And we'll be on Friday night, the Lord willing, and we certainly hope he is, and with Larry. And thanks a lot, Larry, for coming on. And we'll see everybody on Friday night. Good night, everyone.